Well, it is well known that Buddhism is a world religion, and because we now know that the world is round, Buddhism is also called a global religion. Buddhism was global before the word became fashionable, actually. Now, we are all gaining in quantity all over the world. I myself, I'm a European, and I'm director of a Buddhist college in Thailand. And we have both an English and a Chinese program. So I'm a true believer of Buddhism's global role. I just want to add that together with globalization, you also have regionalization. People pay more and more attention to their region instead of the global overview. Both trends go together, also in the field of religion. Another thing, we call Buddhism a religion. What does the word religion mean? I always, in the world we have different cultural areas. There is the Indian cultural area, which goes from northern Afghanistan to Sri Lanka. And this is the Indian cultural area. I'm talking about cultural areas, not about nation states, because that is a new development. So we have cultural areas, and the Indian one is a big one. We have the Chinese one, we have the European one, including the US, by the way. It's started in Rome and in Athens, in Europe in those days. The culture, our culture, comes from there. So what does the word religion mean? Religion, they usually say it comes from the Latin religare, which means to join again, to join. Ligare means to join, to connect. Now what do we connect? Well, we connect the humans with the divine world. That's what we connect according to the word religion. So there is a belief and a worship of a superhuman controlling power. In that way, is Buddhism really a religion? Did it start as a religion, or did it become a religion? What is the relation between Buddhism and the English word religion, which comes from the Latin? Actually, Buddhism started as a path to perfect rest in this world. We can achieve it in this world. It is an ethical path. In that sense, it's not strictly a religion, but it became a religion with the belief in bodhisattvas, with belief in higher powers, especially the Mahasangika school, and I always use the word school these days. I never say sect. Sect is for crazy people who give all their money away. That is called a sect. In Buddhism, we better talk about schools. Yes. And in India, Nikaya. The Nikaya is a separate body. Yes. So it's just a school with its own Vinaya, with its own rules. In India, a school is a Vinaya school. In the rest of the world, a school is a doctrinal school. But I can immediately add that even in India, where a Nikaya is a Vinaya school, the problems with the Vinaya are very often the result of doctrinal problems, which lead to a Vinaya problem also. And when that happens, you have a different Nikaya in India. So, well, there are so many interesting remarks to make. If we look at the Chinese word and the Sino-Japanese word for religion, it means 宗教 or shukyo in Japanese. This Zhong means, well, it is an ancestral temple, basically, and Jiao means teaching. So in East Asia, the idea of religion starts from ancestor worship. So the link is made between us and our ancestors. That's the link in the word religion. But the Chinese word does not make that link. It just says ancestor worship, basically, and you can also worship others than the ancestors, so it became religion in general. Of course, Dharma is still another story. So you see, for different cultural areas in the word religion has different meanings. And before we start talking about a religion, let us make sure what we mean by it. This is my main point here. There is another remark I could make. The situation in India, historically, is quite different from the rest of the world. In India, as I just said, the Vinaya is most important. You can say different things, have different opinions, but if your Vinaya does not change, there is no split. The Vinaya is most important. They say in English that in India, orthopraxis is more important than orthodoxy. So, right living is much more important than a right opinion. You can have many opinions. Well, the argumentative Indian is very well known, but as long as you live by the same rules, there is no break, no split, no Sangha Veda. Now, the first Sangha Veda, even in India, when did it happen? What? Well, there are new opinions about this. My conclusion, and I can tell you more if you want to know more about it, but I just inform you about the conclusion, is that the first split, the first Sangha Bheda, the first Vinaya disagreement, happened in the time of Mahapadmananda of the Nanda kings, just before the Mauryas. The reason is, of course, the Vinaya, but this Vinaya problem was a result of doctrinal problems. The Sthaviras, or the Theras as people sometimes call them now, saw the discussions in the Sangha, and they were afraid that they might lose control of the Sangha. They were afraid that there would be a problem. So they wanted to add a few small rules to the Vinaya, to bring some discipline to the Sangha. But the majority did not want to hear about that. They did not agree. We do not know whether really rules were added or not, but merely the mentioning and the idea was enough for the majority not to agree with such a thing. And when that happens, you have a Sangha Veda, you have a Vinaya problem. But the Vinaya problem is, as I said, the result of doctrinal problems. The discussions were among the one side and the other side, and the one side was saying everything exists, all factors exist, all dharmas exist. The other side was saying, no, there is emptiness. One side was saying, we want to be Arhatship is the highest thing, and we attain this in stage, in Bhumi number 10. Kamadhatu 1, Rupadhatu 4, Arupyadhatu 4. Number 10 we are Arhat in the Ashaiksha Bhumi, that's 10. And the others were saying, no, we don't want to be Arhat, we want to be Bodhisattva. Also 10 stages. Takes much longer to complete this. In stage number 6 of the Bodhisattva, we are Arhat, actually. So there is this, the one side was saying all our wisdom and knowledge comes from Shariputra. The others were saying, no, it comes from Mahakatyayana, from Katyayana. Once we're saying, we have Abhidharma and Shastras teaching how to become an arhat, and the others are saying, no, we have Upadeshas teaching how to look at the Dharma. So there were discussions. We do not really exactly in detail know what happened at the time because there was no writing at the time. But we know what happened later. And based on what happened later, we can have an idea of what the truth was. People very often ask me, do you have proof of that? And then I say, what is proof? If I prove something to you when you don't believe me, then my proof is no proof, right? So the only proof is if an explanation works. The only proof is practical, really. If the explanation works, that's the nearest we can get to proof, really. So that's what we should do. Try to be very well informed, not overlook any information, draw a conclusion and come up with a hypothesis and an idea. If it works, if it explains it all, it is probably true. But how do you prove that? No, in Buddhist studies we don't work with proof. Actually, not only in Buddhist studies, I suppose. So this is the first Sangha Bheda, different opinions. A Sangha Bheda, a schism as it is called. Another remark I would just want to share with you, namely the word Vibhajyapada. Vibhajyapada, when the first Sangha Bheda occurred, when it happened, just before the Mauryas in Pataliputra, not so far from here, when the traditional Sangha did not have a name for itself. There was just the Sangha, under the leadership of the Staviras, and the Mahasangha, the majority. And the members of the Mahasangha of the majority were the Mahasanghikas. That's not really... So the Sangha did not have a name for itself. They were just a Sangha. And then comes Ashoka. About 240 BC. I still say BC and AD now. When I was a young boy, I started saying BC, AD, and then some scholar was telling me, no, it should be AD, and it should be BC and BCE, and all those different, because they wanted to avoid the word Christ. Yes? If you say AD, you say the year of the Lord. And so they told me, avoid this. This is too Eurocentric or whatever. It shouldn't be that. And then so they'd say it's before the Common Era and the Common Era. But I came to the conclusion that before the Common Era was also before Christ. And the Common Era was also AD. So I didn't see why I should change. So I changed back to my original, called it BC and AD again. Very often like that. There are trends, and when you're a young scholar, you listen, you absorb everything, and eventually you think, makes sense. Then later you come to the conclusion, no, it doesn't make sense. This is what happened to me very often, actually. So this Ashoka comes along, and there is activity in the Sangha. There is a synod. Sangiti, a good translation in English of Sangiti is synod, S-Y-N-O-D, because the Sang of Sangiti is the sin of synod together, and the Giti, the chanting, is the O-D, oath, chanting oaths in English. So the Greek word synod and Sangiti are very good translations, convey the same meaning. So there was a synod during Ashoka's days. Maybe even more than one. It happened on Mount Kukkuta in Pataliputra. And who took part in this very famous Ashokan Sangiti? Well, the traditional Sangha, Not the Vatsiputriya, not the Pudgalavada people, because they had already left before Ashoka. So the traditional Sangha minus the Pudgalavada Vatsiputriya people, they took part in that. And there was a discussion about between the traditional Sangha and the new Sarvastivada people who had new ideas. And the Sarvastivada people did not win. I prefer to say did not win instead of lose that bad. So they did not win. But what about the Mahasanghikas? What about the majority at the time? People do not talk about them. But I'm sure that at the same time, during Ashoka, also in Pataliputra, on Mount Kukuta, the Mahasanghikas also knew developments. The development at the time was a split between Bahushrutiya and Prajñaptivada people. So, in the time of Ashoka, you have a Sthaviravada, Sangiti, if I may call it that, and the winners, the traditional Sangha were the winners. They used the word Vibhajavada for themselves. So the traditional Sangha has a name for itself from the time of Ashoka, from the Sangiti during Ashoka's days. From that time, the Sangha, traditional ones, had a special name for themselves. The other ones, the Mahasanghikas, also new developments, I'm sure, also on Mount Kukuta. They were called Kaukutikas, by the way, the old ones. And then in the days of Ashoka, the winners were the Bahushrutiyas. Bahushrutiya means a learned person. Vibhajavada is someone who makes distinctions, who does not believe blindly, who analyzes. Actually, it is a term used by the Buddha for himself. It is mentioned in Anguttara Nikaya, Dasaka Nipata, Sutta number 49, if you want to check it. There, the Buddha calls himself Vibhajavada. So we should be Vibhajavada, we should understand before believing. And Bahushrutiya means scholarly, learned. So Vibhajavada, Bahushrutiya are linked in a way. And we see this in literature sometimes. The Sarvastivadins did not win and they left. Prajñaptivadins did not win and they left too. The Sarvastivadins went mainly north, and the Prajñaptivadins went mainly south. They became very prominent in Andhra. Nagarjuna, I'm sure, was the Madhyamaka group of Nagarjuna was a Prajñaptivada group in South India, in Andhra. The Vinaya of Nagarjuna was the Mahasangika Vinaya, without any doubt. So this historical development is, I would just share this. So Vibhajavada is a relatively new term, comes from Ashoka's days. And they developed too, you know. They also went everywhere, the winners. Went to Gandhara, went to Sri Lanka, went all over India. Went all over India, and India is Mahi. India is the earth. If you are an Indian, then Mahi is India, the Indian cultural area. And when they were all over Mahi, all over India, teaching Buddhism all over India, they are Mahi Shasaka. So the term Mahi Shasaka, I'm sure, is used when the Vibhajavadins were all over the Indian cultural area, teaching all of India, and then you can call them Mahi Shasaka. But the development didn't stop. Development never stops. So it continues, and in the northwest there was a problem with dana, with money. They said, some people said you should give the dana to the stupa, and the Mahishasakas were saying, no, you should give it to the Sangha. So there was a disagreement, a Vinaya disagreement. So there was a Sangha Veda, a split. In the south, in the deep south, Sri Lanka, when they had driven back the Tamils to the mainland, That happens all the time, you know. The history of Sri Lanka, it is the Tamils are coming and then they're pushed back and they're coming back and then they're pushed back again. This is a constant phenomenon in Sri Lankan history. So at one moment when the Tamils were driven back, Vibhajavada obtained a new form in Sri Lanka. They did not want the developments which had taken place between Ashoka and the Mahishasaka development, but they wanted to go back to the original, old Ashokan kind of Vibhajavada. Directly, that's why it came flying, you know. If it comes flying, no evolution, yes? It comes directly from the source, Ashoka, from Ashoka's days. So there are, let's say, a conservative Vibhajavada movement, written down in 20 BC in Anuradha Buddha, in 7 texts spoken by the Buddha. Pali. Pali, by the way, is not a language, it means text. Pali means sacred text, and it is the language of the sacred texts which is also called Pali. And it is not the language, it started as a Magadhi, I'm sure, from this area. And but when it moved, it received other influences of other Prakrits, of other spoken languages. And if we look at the linguistic characteristics of the Pali language, we even sometimes see Gandhari forms in there. You see, so it is a mixed Prakrit of the, they say, the immediate post-Ashokan period, because it had to start before it can develop and absorb new influences. So it's that's the Pali language, and well, there are so many interesting things, but I feel I'm teaching. I shouldn't. There are so many more. And the danger is that when I mention something, I tend to become enthusiastic and talk about it, which does not help the consistency of the talk. So if there are questions, you know, I constantly correct myself. That's also another thing. That's the final thing I want to say. When I was a young boy, I had opinions, of course, and then I wrote ideas, but then I changed my mind. And so, if you want to know what I really say and think, please look at the latest thing, you know, not what I wrote 40 years ago, because it's probably a bit different. I give you a very, very simple example, like Kumarajiva. Kumarajiva, in the old days, I just wrote one word, because he's the son of Kumariyana and of the mother called Jiva, so it's called Kumarajiva, but in Chinese it's called Ju Mo Lo Shi, but I always call him Lo Shi. I asked myself why. Well, it is because the phonetic rendering of Indian words in East Asia also distinguishes between a surname and a given name, between a family name and a given name. So even Ju Mo Lo Shi, which is a phonetic rendering of the Sanskrit word Kumarajiva, even there the Chinese see a family name and a given name. Ju Mo is the family name, Lo Shi is the given name, because they have the rules. You cannot exceed 2 syllables, probably usually 1, not more than 2. So Ju Mo Lo Shi, we call him Lo Shi because in East Asia you call people by their given name, not their family name. Where I come from, it is not polite to call someone by the given name. You call him by the surname, family name. But in East Asia, it's different. They call you by your given name. So they call you Lo Shi and Raju in Japan. So you see, Sangha, even monks' names, you know, like Sangadev, Sangha is the family name. And Tipo, Deva, would be the given name in their eyes, you see. So they call him Deva. Sometimes it's even more complicated than that. Like Shanti Deva could be, that could make Deva the surname, call it Tien, that means Deva, and then Shanti could be the given name. So scholars have been puzzled, should this be Deva Shanti or Shantika or whatever? But no, it's simply Shanti Deva. Actually, I didn't come up with that idea. It was my good friend and the very great Indian scholar, Lokesh Chandra, who explained that to me, and I immediately saw that this was very true. So this, but if you look at what I wrote 20 years ago, it's different, you see. So if you look at something, look at the most recent publications. And if you want to know more, you can always ask me. Thank you for your attention.
एक साहेब बाबा